chapter 12 from John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. As a reminder, I use the acronym SOAP, S-O-A-P, which stands for today, what section are we reading? Chapter 12. O is for observations, direct and indirect. So this is where we share between 1 and 3 observations that you're making from the material. For example, I read this paragraph, I read this sentence, or I read this word, and this is how it spoke to me. This is what it means to me. There are no wrong answers. You're giving your opinion, your impression. And then indirect, it might be that even though I read this section, it reminded me of something else, or I heard somebody or someone share their observation, and that reminded me of something else. That reminder is really intuition. And so I encourage you to share your intuition, because I think that that's the universe's way, the spirit, the quantum field speaking to you and giving you something that is probably very important. And so we can all learn from that. Then application is to ask yourself, how can I immediately apply what I've read or one of my observations within the next 24 to 48 hours? You're trying to convert your learning into long-term memorization. So that action helps solidify that. And then P is passing it forward. Ask yourself, who else do I know that can benefit from this material? You can either share the video or you can share verbally the lesson that you've taken away. There's got to be somebody who either you're coaching, mentoring, or who looks up to you. And this is an opportunity for you to help develop other people. So this is called the law of curiosity. It says growth is stimulated by asking why, the question why. So then it says, he has a quote here by George Bernard Shaw that says, some men see things as they are and ask why. Others dream things that never were and ask why not. So that's a good quote. Good opportunity for you to look at yourself and just say, hey, why aren't things the way they can be? Why aren't things the way that you like them to be? And start forming that image in mind. My first observation is on page 239, if you have the PDF. And he's talking about, where does curiosity come from? He says, curious people possess a thirst for knowledge. Curiosity is the primary catalyst for self-motivated learning. People who remain curious do not need to be encouraged to ask questions or explore. They just do it all the time, and they keep doing it. Then he says, curiosity helps a person to think and expand possibilities beyond the ordinary. Asking why fires the imagination. People say not to cross a bridge until you come to it, but as someone once said, this world is owned by people who have crossed bridges in their imagination before anyone else. Albert Einstein said, all meaningful and lasting change starts first in your imagination, and then it works its way out. So what my observation is the power of your imagination and memorizing your future. If you've known me, if you've been coached or mentored by me, or if you've seen my material before, you know that I'm always emphasizing the importance of vision casting, the importance of first creating your mind, taking an idea, falling in love with the idea, which is what I call ideal, and then thinking about it every day. Day by day, you're adding details. You're using your imagination. And that's what I mean by you are memorizing your future. So you're memorizing what it looks like, what it feels like. What does that person behave like? How does that person speak? How does that person dress? How does that person eat? How does that person treat other people? How does that person lead? How does that person lead himself or herself? That's what I mean about imagination. Your thoughts, which eventually become the imagination, are things and they become things. So look at it that your thoughts are extremely powerful. They eventually actually become physical things. They become manifested. So spend a significant amount of time focusing on what you want or what you desire. People spend a significant amount of time focusing on what they don't want, what they don't like, what's not working out for them. They think in terms of I can't and limitations. You need to reverse that. You need to do the opposite of that and spend a lot of time thinking about, what is it that I do want? What do I desire? What will happen if it works out? What can I do? What else can I do? What can I try differently? What can I do differently? Who else can I ask for information? What else can I read? So you're looking at your goal, setting a goal, keeping that picture of that in your mind, using your imagination. You're holding that image. You're holding that image every day. You want it to become your dominant thought. Your dominant energy is focusing on what I want, and eventually that will become manifested. So that's observation number 1. Observation number 2 is on page 247. So he says, partake in the fruit of failure. The fruit of failure. A curious, growing person approaches failure in a way completely different from someone who isn't curious. Most people see failure, see mistakes, and they see errors as signs of weakness. When they fail, they say, I'll never do that again. But people who grow and develop see failure as a sign of progress. So now he's talking about growing and develop. People who grow and develop will see failure as a sign of progress. I'm moving in the right direction. They know that it is impossible to continually try without sometimes failing. It's part of a curiosity journey. It's part of the process. Success is a process. Therefore, they make failure their friend. So they know failure, mistakes, and errors are all part of the process, and so they're going to be comfortable around it. When failure is your friend, you don't ask, how can I distance myself from this experience? Instead, you ask, why did it happen? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? And as a result, you fail fast, you fail forward, you learn faster, and you get to try things again. You get to try them even faster. So that leads to growth and future success. So I say be a scientist. I'm a scientist. I work with a lot of scientists. I think like a scientist. So I'm constantly developing hypotheses. What will happen if I try this? What will happen if I try that? I'm just curious by nature, just like a child is very curious. They're a little scientist, if you will. And so once I start measuring the results and writing down the results, then I develop a theory. For example, thoughts are things. Thoughts, when you think about them, your dominant thoughts, and you use your imagination to create the picture, eventually that thing will manifest itself. Now, maybe you're listening to this for the first time and not believing it, but you can be a scientist. You can give that a try because you're doing it already. In many cases, you might be thinking about what you don't want, and you're constantly seeing more of what you don't want. You're creating or contributing to that situation, those circumstances, those conditions by your thoughts. So again, replace those thoughts with something more affirming, more positive, goal-oriented. Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? Do, have, give. Focus on that. Spend a lot of time on that, and you'll see different results. Then I write the law of polarity. So Napoleon Hill talks about this in his book. He doesn't call it the law of polarity, but it's the same thing, in my opinion. And so Napoleon Hill says that every adversity, every failure that you're going to experience, every mistake that you're going to have, every heartbreak that you will feel, carries with it a seed of an equal or greater benefit. So equal. So if it's a little bit bad, it's a little bit good. If it's moderately bad, there's a moderate good side to this, but you have to look for it. You have to find it. And if it's really, really bad, then there's something that is really, really good. Again, you have to train yourself. You have to condition yourself. You have to think like a scientist and look for those things that support what it is that you want. So that's my second observation. And then my final observation is on page 248. So he says, stop looking for the right answer. Why is that? Because there's always more than one solution to a problem. And this is good for leaders to remind us, like there's not just one way of doing things. There are multiple ways of doing things. And eventually you get to decide and pick which of these ways are better ways. You may not necessarily discover the ultimate best way, but out of all these different ways of solving a problem, you get to pick the best of them. But the reason I'm saying that is because down the road in the future, somebody else might come in and even find a better way than the way you've discovered. So he says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's a phrase definitely that was not coined by someone dedicated to personal growth. So he's saying people who are dedicated to personal growth don't use that phrase. And instead, what they ask, that if it's not broken, how can we do it better? That's called continuous improvement, process improvement. They ask, if it ain't broke, when is it likely to break in the future? They're being proactive. They're thinking ahead. And if it's not broken, if it ain't broke, how long will it serve us as the world changes? You need to keep changing with the times. You don't want to be like the old Kodak company, which they knew about digital filming, but they decided, hey, we're not going to invest in that. We're not going to sell that technology. And I do believe that they were the first one to develop digital technology, but eventually someone else ran with that technology and essentially put them out of business. They're not the Kodak that we once knew. And so my observation is this is a good leadership moment. It's useful for delegating and developing of your team. What is different, better, or an improved way to do what you do or increase your income? So in other words, if you're a leader, and a leader is not a person with a title, a leader is a person who has the ability to influence other people, hopefully in a positive way. But as a leader, you have an opportunity, if you watch some of my other videos on delegating, this is an opportunity that when you're delegating to someone else, do not assume that your way is the only way. Do not assume that your way is the best way. It might be the best way in your mind, but allow the other person to be creative, because they may come up with a way that you never thought of. They might have access to tools that were not available when you were doing it, or they may have access to tools that were available, but you were not aware of them. So you want to develop people, you want to encourage them, you want to grow them, you want to be part of their growth. And so this is a great way of helping them grow by letting them figure out how to come up with a solution. You have to be clear with what the objective is. So the objective of the goals, sometimes those typically are not and should not be negotiable, but how you get there can be negotiable unless you have a very strict procedure or regulatory requirement, and then in that case is a little bit different. But in general, let them figure out the best way. And again, this is just better set of questions that they can answer, that they can ask, that you can ask of them as well. So this is Rich Arriaga. Hope this is helpful. And so what do we do now? So now you go around the room. Everybody shares between 1 and 3 observations that they've made from the material or from what I've said or the person ahead of them said. And just a reminder that if you're the last person or you're near the last person and you feel that, hey, what I would have said has already been said, I would still encourage you to say it. Why? Because you have a voice. We want to hear your voice. Your voice matters. And because you may say it with a different tone, you might use a different word that really resonates with somebody else and can change their personal or professional trajectory just based on what you've shared and the way you're saying it. So again, Rich Arriaga, have a great day.